continue with the program here on CTV and Talk City 91.1 FM. A series of public conversations on the draft National Policy on Culture and the Arts is scheduled to take place very soon. Joining us on set to tell us all about it, we have Cultural Officer Marlon DeBee. Good morning and welcome.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. We're talking about this National Draft Policy on Culture and the Arts. What is it exactly all about?
Well, cultural policy is important in terms of how you manage the sector. As Trinidad and Tobago talks a lot about diversification of the economy and so on, it's important that you have some policy guidelines and that there are frameworks for how artists could operate in the sector, how they could generate income in the sector, how they could have access to funds, and so on. So over the years, cultural policy has been in and out of the agenda for the Ministry of Culture in its various incantations of the ministry. So as a culture division, most of that information and the expertise have lied there for a while. And what we have now is the policy unit, who is headed by Dr. Donna May Knights. She has been able to work with a team and move that policy to a further position, and of course under the leadership of Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly, the minister. So for this particular series of conversations, what we hope to achieve is that the sector, particularly the artists, the practitioners, the policymakers and so on, the funders, all those persons get involved in the conversation to develop, to help us look at what we've designed so far and does it actually speak specifically to the sector? Because policy would make no sense if the people who are actually working in the sector can't benefit from the policy. So the consultations, the conversations that we prefer to call them, is intended to address the needs specifically, have the public ask any questions, any concerns and recommendations as well to see how we could shape it even further.
And what sort of challenges does it really hope to address?
Well, the challenges that it hopes to address, I think one of the major issues in the sector is funding and that sort of incentive for private public sector, civil society to partner and engage more so that more creative work is produced and that creative work has a major impact in Trinidad and Tobago society and of course globally as well. So what we've identified is a lot of silos and people work in various groups, and which is good for developing work, but sometimes, often, you need a lot of collaboration and integration. So the artist, how the artist works with academia, how the artist works with the private sector to realize these cultural goods and products and services and get them further, a further reach within the society and as I mentioned, globally as well.
Wonderful. Well, we'd like to invite into the conversation Dr. Donna May Knights. She's the head of the policy unit of the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning and good morning to your viewers.
Now, we're having a very, very exciting discussion here on this particular initiative, the National Draft Policy on Culture and the Arts. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, let me say that we are very excited in the ministry to be able to bring forward to the nation a draft policy on culture and the arts, and actually it's a policy framework. And this is because since the 1970s, we've been working towards getting a policy. And so we're excited, one, to be able to bring a policy, a draft to the table to engage the stakeholders in consultations around this policy. But also, because we've used the framework approach, it gives the sector greater opportunity to be involved in the shape of the policy. So the policy as it stands provides broad goals and objectives for the sector. But the sector stands on three legs: the visual and performing arts, the heritage, memory and legacy, and the cultural industries. And so while we've established in this policy some broad parameters for the sector, these three areas, what we really want is to allow the citizens to be more involved in terms of shaping those particular areas. And so that's the approach we will take. So we have broad consultations right now coming up soon, which will discuss broadly the policy and so on, but thereafter, we would spend some additional time working through those three pillars of the cultural sector.
Now, Mr. Beek, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but who specifically from the national population are you hoping to engage in these conversations?
Well, look, let's talk about the first date.
Sure.
The first event is Monday coming, which is the 16th, and it's at SAPA, the Sundar Popo Auditorium at SAPA in San Fernando. It starts at 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon, and it should go for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. With a Q&A session in particular. So we'll present on the policy,
right,
and then we will open up the floor for discussions back and forth
about
exactly, which is very important. But in terms of specifically, the ministry recognizes national organizations who represent various disciplines in the arts. So the National Dance Association, Drama Association, the Music Festival Association, the Sanskritic Sangam, the Secondary Schools Drama Association, and so on, Ramlila Council, etc. And so it's important that the umbrella bodies, representatives from those bodies, and those who are practicing in the various disciplines as well, are present. Because when you go through the pillars of the policy, as Donna may mentioned, you want that the visual artist, the performing artist, the literary artist is able to see themselves in the policy. Often policies could be the domain of policymakers, and it could have a disconnect from the actual sector that is intended for. And so it's important that the policy, that we're able to break down the language of the policy and allow the practitioner to see themselves in the policy, because they're the ones to tell us how real world and how accessible this policy is, right? Could look good on paper, but how does this apply based on the work that I am doing? How am I going to access funds based on what you said in the policy? How am I going to have the opportunity for capacity development, both locally and abroad? Or I'm going to have opportunities for collaboration with other practitioners and with other members of the broader community. So we intend to break down the policy in that way in terms of the discussion, and we will achieve a lot more of that when we do the thematic sessions, which are subsequent to the one on the 16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have thematic sessions. So this kicks off Monday 16th at the Sundar Popo Auditorium, SAPA, 2:30 p.m. And you said it's 2 hours and you have questions and answers.
Yes.
What about the thematic sessions? When do they take place?
Okay, so well, let me first tell you about the Tobago session, because on the 24th we will be in Tobago at the Shore Park Complex, and that one starts at 3:30 in the afternoon. So and that one is billed as another national in terms of engaging the entire population of Tobago and the arts, culture and arts sector in Tobago. So that's on the 24th. And then every Monday thereafter, we continue with the thematic session. So on the 30th, we start with looking at visual and performing arts. And so that one is at Napa, at the Hotel and Restaurant at Napa. And then we have the Heritage, Memory and Legacy focal area, and that will be in San Fernando on the 6th of August, which is at the City Hall in San Fernando. And on the 13th, we come back into Port of Spain and we deal with the cultural industries. And then that definitely, the whole question of cultural industries and being able to monetize our cultural products and being able to make maximum capacity of our cultural products, but also in terms of helping cultural entrepreneurs to build sustainable livelihoods. That is also a key goal of the policy. And so that particular session on the cultural industries would be a critical one as well on the 13th.
Yes. Now, Mr. Lebik, you mentioned the importance of the public coming out to attend these lectures, but do they recognize the importance, and how do you plan to engage them?
Yes, I think in the past when we've had consultations on the policy in the various versions of the policy, we've never had to worry about a turnout and worry about a feedback on the day itself and then a subsequent feedback via email and telephone conversations. So yes, the sector is pretty interested. Some people might think, okay, are we consultation burnt out? No. What is different about this one? It's because I think the thematic sessions is really where you're going to benefit a lot more. Because if you do like one consultation session, which may be a long day, a full day, You could make your contributions then, but then it's all mixed up with other contributions that are not specific to your area.
Yes.
So with the thematic sessions, you're going to achieve that during that period. So yes, there is interest. We've had people come to the office asking for copies of the draft document or the, what we call the executive summary of the document. And people have been online downloading it and so on. So we're engaging them via our website, CDCA, www.cdca.gov.tt. You could also find us on Facebook, so either the Community Development Ministry Facebook page, or you could type in Culture Division Facebook on Facebook as well, and both of those pages will come up. You would see information, you could ask questions on the page, and then the social media managers will just engage you and send you information, and you would find out more about the consultation itself.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, the thematic sessions, how exactly is it structured?
Right, well, those would be roundtable sessions.
Okay.
Those are the roll-up-your-sleeve sessions,
Yeah.
where people would sit around tables and they would be able to discuss specific areas of whichever theme. So whether it's VAPA, that's the visual and performing arts, various themes in that category, people would be able to sit around those tables. So we would have, you know, the sector themselves, the stakeholders, being able to facilitate the discussion around their tables and then present their recommendations at the end of that session. So it's a very intimate and a very practical session where we would seek to build out in more detail some of the kinds of recommendations that we would like to see after.
And what sort of feedback have we been getting from Tobago? Are they 100% on board as well?
Yes.
Yeah?
I mean, what is good is that we're working with our counterparts in the at the Division of Tourism, Culture and Transportation. So they've been lobbying with their superiors, they've been lobbying with the sector. Our visit to Tobago is in Heritage, during the Heritage Festival period. So which is important because we'll be on the ground whilst the festival is happening, and there'll be interest, there'll be that buzz already in terms of the creativity, but now this is the policy side of the creative sector which we'll be addressing in Tobago. Just that we should also emphasize that the VAPA is not limited to visual and performing arts. It's just branded in that way based on how the policy is written at this time, but that includes everyone who's in the creative side or with creative arts. So if you're a visual artist, a performing artist, a literary artist, a poet, people in film and fashion as well.
Okay. Yeah. So how long will these sessions be ongoing? So I know it kicks off on Monday 16th. How long will it be ongoing?
Right. Well, it will go until the 13th. Excuse me, 13th of August. But this is just this phase of consultations, if you like.
Yes.
Once the policy would go, after the consultation, this period of consultations, the policy would go back to Cabinet for approval. And after that, then we would work in more detail with those three pillars. So then we would have stakeholders involved in building out those three areas.
Okay, well, it sounds pretty exciting.
Yes.
Any closing remarks you'd like to make?
Just you could contact our office on 225 4023
4023
extensions 4011 or 4030.
Wonderful. Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Very, very exciting developments, and we urge you to take full advantage of this. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you for staying with us. News is up next. I'm Verna Barath. Have a great day.